Previously on Goshen Man.
This funky bear, dude. I've never seen, like, pictures from the road in the fog. I think pretty much any of the big lakes you can take a boat tour in, though, so something to think about for the future.
Now for day 5, we would actually be departing Glacier and instead moving on to Waterton, which is Glacier's Canadian counterpart. Now as we were departing that morning, I noticed something over the horizon towards the west. Well, the lack of something. There were no clouds in the sky for once. So wait, if we go on Going to the Sun Road right now, would there be the sun out? Would we actually see the sun on Going to the Sun Road? And, well, yeah. So we went down Going to the Sun Road one more time, and this time we could actually see the full mountains in their glory. If you didn't watch part 1, the last time we went through Going to the Sun Road, it was very foggy and misty, and a lot of the views were a bit obscured, which is cool in its own way, but it's also nice to be able to see like all of the valleys, you know? Having seen both in these videos, what do you think is cooler looking, foggy or sunny? I don't know, it was nice, the best of both worlds though. However, it was way more crowded. There was still like open slots and parking lots the first time we went through Going to the Sun Road. Pretty much didn't make any stops this day, because like every pullout along like the scenic views was filled up. Like, it might be a big crowd right now, but it's nowhere near Zion. And then after we got over the pass, we saw, like, this row of cars just parked on anything that you could remotely park on without being in immediate danger. Now that's a Zion level of parking. But yeah, this was kind of a just nice little way to send off the Glacier portion of the trip. Just to see Going to the Sun Road one last time. I'd said that as if we were on Going to the Sun Road more than twice. But I guess we did stop at one place we didn't before, this parking lot, to see the view of this lake that I forget the name of, and we could look at this island. Actually, wait, no, we stopped at 2 parking lots to look at lakes. I love the Glacier lakes, man. It makes me wish. After that, we exited the park and continued on up the eastern side and went on to go visit Canada. Now, if you're not aware, the Continental Divide is a line that runs down the Rockies and basically splits its watersheds of North America. Anything to the west of it travels to the Pacific Ocean, and anything to the east of it travels to the Atlantic Ocean. Anything to the east of it flows to the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico. That's how it works in the contiguous US, at least. However, Glacier has a small sliver of a third watershed in the US that flows into Hudson Bay. If I were to come back and do any hike in Glacier, I think I want to hike to the Continental Divide Tri-Point on the peak of it. I think that'd be cool. We continued further north than we did a couple days ago, onwards toward the Canadian border. Now, fun fact, I used to live in Alberta, and I thought, man, this is going to be strange, visiting Alberta for the first time since the pandemic, and then it wasn't, because it's a completely different part of Alberta that I've never been to. We then see this pretty cool mountain. After driving through a bit of plains, a bit of forest, we arrived at the Chief Mountain border crossing. Now, getting through to Canada has usually been a pretty simple process for me. They usually just ask the standard questions and they're like, have a nice day. I'll talk about getting back into America later, though. Whole story there. But now we were in Canada. I mean, it's more of this amazing scenery, you know? Canada is just America, but more north. As much as they would disagree with that, too bad. However, I did notice something when we pulled over and stopped at this first overlook here. There was a lot more, like, flies around. I don't know why there'd be more flies slightly more north. Then we drive on down these windy mountains and reach the gate to Waterton. This is kind of irrelevant, but the way they price Canadian national parks is different than American ones. Now, if you're just visiting one park in the US, like one time, they'll give you like a week's pass. Like, oh, here's this voucher, this works for a week after you've purchased it, essentially. In Canada, they charge you by the day. Like, sure, it's cheaper if you were just going for one day. But if you're like staying a whole week, that's kind of brutal. You'd probably just get the year pass at that point, maybe. I don't know. Just a weird little thing I noticed. Also, I think America's yearly pass is cheaper. And we have more national parks. Take that. So yeah, then you drive a bit and you reach Waterton Village, which is like a real town inside the national park. Which, I mean, I'm sure those exist in the US. I just haven't encountered any yet. The real towns are like outside the national park boundaries, but here it's like, yeah, this is a livable area. There's like a full residential area beyond just like the employees here, which I don't think I've seen in the US. Anyways, we get there, we stop, we look at the lake. It's a very nice lake. They might call me the ocean man, but I feel like I'm more of a lake man at heart. We saw this deer. They just wander throughout the town. I'm sure that's like a novelty to some people. I don't even know if I got footage of a deer. We stayed at these cabins, which is kind of cool. I did have quite an amazing view. Walked through the town. Waterton did have like a nice little walking street that you could just walk down, and we just kind of enjoyed our first night here in Canada. I had poutine for the first time in years. Also, okay, why isn't poutine popular in America? I don't get it. Like, it's got 3 of America's favorite foods, fries, gravy, and cheese. Like, why don't we eat it here? Like, I mean, I've seen it occasionally, but how is it not widespread? What the fuck? But I guess Canada can keep, like, one of their only foods that distinguishes them from the US. We also saw this bear. It's the bear from the first part's brother. For day whatever we're on, we decided to take a bit of a boat tour. But we were going a bit later in the afternoon, so first we decided to check out this waterfall here. Now this waterfall is pretty cool, it's right in the town. It also has a couple of paths. You can hike up this one, and then you can see it from the top, which is pretty neat. It's a waterfall. And then you can hike up this other path on the other end of it. You don't really see the waterfall as well over here, and this is just like a longer trail that goes back into the woods. But you do get a nice view of the valley here, so that's cool. Now we decided to go see some of the other roads in the park. Unfortunately, one of them was closed. I'm sensing a theme here. Now this has happened to us 3 times now that I've mentioned, and twice that I haven't mentioned. So, kind of striking out here. Which is unfortunate because down this road was a trail where you could pretty easily hike to the easternmost part of BC. And I haven't been to BC yet, so I thought that would've been cool, but nope. So we drove down this other road, which goes down a valley which had been pretty much devastated by a forest fire. We drove to the end, but our boat tour was coming up, so we're like, well, we gotta turn around. We'll check out this hiking trail later, because fun thing about Waterton, dogs are actually allowed to walk on the trails, which is pretty cool, as long as they're on a leash. So we're actually able to go on little hikes today. We turned back, went down the valley, very cool, and guess what we saw? A grizzly bear wandering through the marsh. You gotta love it. Anyways, after that brief little stop, we then took a little boat tour. I thought we were gonna get to ride on this boat. No, unfortunately not. That one doesn't really do tours, I think, anymore at least. We rode on this one, but you know, it was still pretty fun nonetheless. Pretty fun experience to ride on a boat. Of course, they'll talk about the wildlife and a lot of stuff I've heard throughout my life, but also, you know, some new stuff about like just specifically Waterton. And all the mountains. Big Bertha. I don't remember which one was Big Bertha. I don't even I think it might have just been called Mount Bertha. Named after someone named Big Bertha, maybe? I don't remember. But yeah, this was a pretty cool boat tour. Now, fun fact about this tour, you actually cross over into the United States on the water here. And you can actually see the borderline right here. This slash cut through the trees is the US-Canada border, and they cut it about every 20 years to clearly demonstrate where the border is, which was pretty neat. So we crossed back over into Montana for a little bit. So we did visit Glacier this day. You know what? The Glacier title still applies to this day. That was kind of neat. Cross back over to Montana for a little bit. Boat swings around so you can get some pictures. He talks about bears. Now, the road we saw the bear on earlier today, the tour guide said he saw 5 bears there last night. Which, damn, that's pretty cool. Fun little boat tour. Got off, and we're like, guess we'll, I don't know, get lunch, go hike. Anyways, took this hike along this trail. this ridge where you're supposed to get a nice little view of the lake and the valley. That's what we're here to see. Now, unfortunately, Scooter is getting a bit old, and he doesn't want to really go as far anymore. So the hikes we go on aren't as long, but we did get this nice view of the valley, so that was neat. Scooter's our dog, in case that wasn't clear. So we get this nice view of the valley, but we didn't call it a day yet. Now, outside of the park gate, but still in the park boundaries, there's this bison paddock in Waterton. Guess what they have? It's bison. It's like this Jurassic Park looking paddock. See, having been to Yellowstone, this is like a weird version of that. It's cool to look at bison. There's also some baby bison, some calves there. That was pretty cool. Gotta see them playing around. I mean, this paddock was massive, by the way. It's a full, probably like 20, maybe not 20. It was a full like 15-minute loop driving around it. However, all the bison are just like right here at the start. Like they had this whole area and they're just hanging out by the fence at the entrance, which is kind of funny. But then we looked at the bison, saw some people are behind us, moved along, and drove around this loop in the bison paddock. Just all of this space. Then we stopped for a little hike on this trail near the bison paddock, looked at the views, and I think that's where we ended up calling it a day. Had very bland pizza. I mean, granted, we're also in a tourist town. Like, tourist towns usually don't have good food, but the Glacier tourist towns had much better food than this, I will say. Now, for the last full day of the trip, we started off by checking out the Waterton Visitor Center they had in town. You know, it was your typical visitor center, and they had a lot of information about the area and the animals and whatnot, but, I just want everyone to know that someone made this. Someone made this, and also someone asked for that to be made. It's like, hi, yeah, could we get a fox statue for the visitor center? Like, oh yeah, of course, I can do that. What pose do you want it in? Could it be, like, shitting? The answer is yes. It was a bit of a cloudy morning, but we decided to go back on the road we drove on yesterday, but didn't have time to hike on any of the trails, and stopped at this one that was called, like, Red Rock Canyon or something like that. Guess why it's called that? Not to be confused with the Red Rock Canyon in Utah, or in Nevada, or in anywhere that has red rocks and rivers. This was a pretty nice little hike, Waterton has experienced a massive fire within the past 10 years, so a lot of the old trees in most of the park are pretty much gone. But you did get this nice contrast between the old burnt forest versus the new green lush forest emerging from the ashes. It's a really cool demonstration of, like, how forest fires do play a role, So, I mean, sure, forest fires now, can be brutal, but, they are part of nature sometimes. A big fire is meant to happen in a forest every however often, so that new life can arise. But it was a pretty cool walk. What do you want me to say? Do you want me to slander this? That's not happening. Look at this. This is cool. We were able to overlook this waterfall here, which is pretty cool. They built these observation decks. Then we went back to the start of the trail, hung out in the river for a little bit, and then we drove on back through the valley. This time it was a little bit clearer out as well. And as we were driving back, we saw another bear. This time I believe it was a black bear. I didn't get a good enough look at its overall shape. It was a bit smaller, had a darker color, so I think more likely a black bear. But if you don't know, black bears come in, like, all the colors that a bear can come in. So it's funny they're just called black bears. But black bears usually are black, though, so, like... Anyways, then we decided to check out the big ol' hotel in Waterton, the Prince of Wales. Prince of Wales has a pretty nice overlook where you can see, like, all of the Waterton lakes and through the valley. And you can go inside, you don't have to be staying at the hotel to enter it. All the hotel staff were wearing, like, this fancy old-timey uniform, but, like, half the people inside were either like, oh yes, we are dressed European, or covered in dust and wearing a backpack. You gotta love old-timey buildings in tourist towns. There's not a lot here. It's just like an old building. Got a good view, but you can get that outside. Then we just kind of, hung out for a little bit, relaxed. And decided to go out on the one road, I can't remember the name of it, the Red Rock Road, for a third time, because we had been told that the best time to see bears was in the evening. Now, we had heard from other people, of course, they saw a lot of bears on that road, so we're like, if they're out in the evening, then hey, why don't we try to see another bear? However, you cannot force your bear sightings, as we learned, and this was the one time we went on the road and we didn't see a bear. So, you just can't force something like that. But yeah, we kind of took it slow this day. Because we're, you know, it's after a week of stuff and we're kind of winding down. And this was the one day of the trip that we didn't pass through Glacier at all. And then the next morning, it was time to leave the Waterton Glacier International Peace Park. I guess that's something I could mention. Glacier and Waterton were like the first international peace park, and because, quote, nature knows no boundaries. And to that I say, what about rivers? Or what about mountains or oceans? I feel like those are boundaries. I don't, like, even more so than political boundaries. Well, sometimes, because political boundaries are often on mountains and rivers. Sometimes. There's tons of boundaries in nature, though, I would say. But yeah, it was time to head home. Pass back over the invisible boundary that is actually very visible due to the tree cut. You know, going back into the US was a whole other thing. We're crossing over the border. He asks us the typical questions of like, and the border patrolman asked us, he's like, oh, where are you from? And we're like, oh, we're from Montana. He's like, and you traveled all the way to Waterton to... you betrayed your own kind to go to Waterton for some hiking? And we're like, yeah, mixing it up. And then when he asks, it's like, oh, are you bringing anything back? It's like, oh yeah, we got some souvenirs, some shirts, whatever. And he's like, I don't think we should give $1 to their government. They're socialists, you know that? And we're like, okay. We obviously disagree in giving money to the Canadian government. Oh yeah, they're gonna get so much money from the $50 we spent on shirts. Or whatever, I don't know. So now I'm wondering, like, what's it like for a Canadian to drive through then? Like, does he just be like, but you're glad you're coming to the US, huh? Canada sucks. And they're just like, or since it's Alberta, you probably do get a bunch of people like, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, then we went home. Hope you enjoyed this Glacier series. If you haven't watched the first 2 parts, go check them out. Really appreciate if you did. Like the video, subscribe, whatnot. And stay tuned for more Goshen Man. I got some more Montana stuff coming up, and maybe a Washington in there. Probably not. Check out other Ocean Man social medias in the description. That'd be cool as well. Thank you.